Which hides are the best for your armor? Which ones should you put? Today, we're covering every single hide. In the description, I have made a full Google Doc sheet for these hides. On the bottom here, you have helmet, masks, top and bottom, shoes and gloves, hide parts. Every single armor piece has different perks, so if you want to see mask perks, you click on masks, and you will be able to see every single hide stats in detail. Now, we're gonna start from helmet hides, which is gonna be the first one, deer hides. It's marked as good early, which means you can easily get deers as soon as you start in the game and just yoink it on your armor. Now, how does this work? It gives you damage reduction plus 3% while sprinting. If you go in game and click your inventory, click gear, click C, scroll down until you have damage reduction. This is what that hide does. It gives you damage reduction when you sprint. Sprinting means if you sprint like this, when you hold shift, you will gain a 3% damage reduction. As soon as you stop sprinting, you will lose it. Next up, the Highland Deer hide. It gives you damage reduction plus 5% while sprinting. It works the same way as this one, except you gain 2% more. If you're walking like this, you do not gain any damage reduction. You have to be holding shift. Now, why this is not good is because mostly if you're doing PVE, if you scope in with your gun like this, you're not sprinting. You cannot sprint. You're literally strafing, and which means you're moving. This counts as moving, yes, but definitely not as sprinting. And even if you ADS down and hold shift, that is still does not count as sprinting. However, now we have Forest Deer hide, which gives you damage reduction 5% while scoped. But what scoped means is when you are fully zoomed in with the weapon like this, in first person mode. If you're shooting like this, or like this is not scoped in. This is scoped in. Same goes with snipers. If you're shooting in hipfire like this, that is not scoped in. This is scoped in. As it says damage reduction, it goes into this multiplier over here. So instead of 0%, we would have 5% when we're scoped in. Next up, we have the Tundra Deer hide. Damage reduction 3% while moving. But basically, damage reduction becomes 3% as soon as you start moving like this. You can be moving in OTS mode. So I'm currently moving. You can be scoped in and moving. As long as you're moving, you have that 3% damage reduction. If you're sprinting, it also works. And if I auto sprint right now and open my inventory, scroll down, you can see we have 3% damage reduction. However, to keep that damage reduction, you would have to be always moving, which means you never let go of your WASD keys. Out of all of these hides for the helmet, none of them are great, but the damage reduction while moving might be a good option. This is the only one I would recommend for PvP or PvE, since you just need to be moving, and if you're moving, you have that damage reduction. While sprinting is not good because you have to be sprinting, and most of the times if you run out of stamina, you're not sprinting, you're moving, which means you get no benefits at all. And when you're scoped in, you are not sprinting while scoped in, so it gives you no benefit at all. It's almost useless, unless you are running a marathon and you're always sprinting and you never run out of stamina, then that would be a great option. Moving on to Wolf Skin, weak spot damage reduction plus 5%. This one is very easy to get, so you just need to slay a wolf and you have 5% weak spot damage reduction. But the way it works is actually awful. I'm gonna explain it to you right now. So all of the wolf skins for the helmet have the same stats. Weak spot damage reduction. This one is just always there, so no conditions. This one has a condition while moving. If you don't move, it's 0%. This one is 8% when you are in a team with more than one player, so only 2 players. If you're solo, you get nothing, and this one reduces if you're crouched. So now I'm gonna show you the math behind this and why this hide sucks. A great example I can show you right now, there's a battle mod substat that it does exactly almost the same. So additional weapon damage inflicted after hitting a unit is reduced by 12%. So what this does is when you shoot a player, and if you have this mod on, you will reduce their weapon damage by 12% for 2 seconds. That is the same thing the wolf hide does. Weak spot damage reduction plus 10% while crouched. So if another player has 200% weak spot damage, they will be dealing to you instead 190% weak spot damage. That's only if I'm crouched though here. Now I'm gonna show it to you in Eternal Land so you believe me. So currently we are wearing the Jungle Wolf skin helmet. We get 10% weak spot damage reduction while we are crouched. It's only weak spot damage reduction, nothing else. So if you get shot in the body, you don't get any damage reduced. So right now I'm not gonna crouch. I'm just gonna stand still and let's test the damage to the weak spot. Our gun has 102 damage, 60% weak spot damage, 0 weapon damage. So let's shoot in the head. We do 147. Now we're gonna crouch. We do 138. We're gonna quickly jump in the calculator and our base damage is 102. Weak spot damage was 60%. If you did not know, players have a 10% damage reduction hidden value, so we have to include a minus 10% here. That's our 147 weak spot damage in the head. And now if I included the extra 10%, you can see the damage does not match because it's not calculated multiplicatively. It's actually just a subtract from your weak spot damage, which instead would be 50 here because the mod reduces 10% weak spot damage. So it's additive or subtractive, as you can say, but not multiplicative. So now if you take a look, this is when the mod is active, when we are crouched, 138. And this is when we are not crouched, 147. Let's do it again. 138 when it's crouched, and 147. Next is rabbit fur, damage reduction 5% while in midair. This literally explains what it does. It just gives you damage reduction when your character is jumping and is airborne. So like right now, we are in the air, and as soon as we touch the ground, we lose the damage reduction. Not really a good investment for PvP because some of the times you don't even jump. So maybe like 40% of the times you jump. Just imagine when you might need that 5%, it's just not there. So I would not use this at all. Now we have damage reduction 8% while vaulting. While vaulting means when you climb stuff like this, that is called vaulting. And then we have status damage reduction 10% while rolling. I would not use any of these for PvP or PvE. I mean, for PvE, no mobs do status damage to you. Only players do status damage. So this is not that useful. Now we have wool, non-weak spot damage reduction plus 5%. It works the same way. Right now I don't have the helmet equipped. We are doing 92 damage, 102 damage from the pistol. I mean, I can test it in the body because it's the same. We'll do the calculations anyways. So 83 in the body. And now if I put the helmet on, which gives us non-weak spot damage reduction right there, we will now do even less damage, which is 78 in the body, in the legs 87. Applying the same math, we have to add a minus 10 because this is to torso damage reduction. This is player damage reduction. Every player has minus 10, so we have to include this. In the torso, we did 83, and in the feet, we did 92, or in the legs. If we add the non-weak spot damage reduction, we do 78 in the body. Now, keep in mind, it is not damage reduction. It's a separate multiplier, so if you get damage reduction, let's say 1%, then you would have to do a minus 1, a new multiplier, calculated all together with these values. If you had weapon damage reduction 2%, then you would have to do another 2% here. And yeah, the formula would be as simple as this. If you want to add more values, you just copy this again, keep doing it. And here you just need to replace whatever value you want. If it's minus, then you have to include a minus and just change the percentage here. If it's 10%, then you put 10. If it's 50%, you put 50. And if it's not minus, then you just remove the minus and boom, that's 50% increase. That's how you would be able to calculate your damage if you ever wanted to. But yeah, the reason why we do 78 and not 79 is because this is getting rounded down to 78 because the number here is not higher than 5. That's why it's 78. So there you go. That's what this non-weak spot damage reduction does. If you shoot in the head, you do not get damage reduction in the head, only in other parts than the head. I'm not going to show you because, I mean, that's so obvious. Non-weak spot damage reduction. I would not use this either, but we have one last hide, which is the golden wool. Damage reduction fluctuates between 1% and 10% every second. This is the best hide for PvP and damage reduction in general. It's best for PvE as well, so this is the one you want to have. Now, why it's so good is because if you take a look at my damage reduction, it's going from 10% to 1% to 10%, 9%, 6%, 6%. It's always, most likely, always going to be above 6%, and it's just always going to stay there. It's very unlikely for it to be 1, 2, 3, and 4%. Like, it's always in the high numbers, so this is why it's the best hide. And yeah, that's why I really prefer using golden wool. I mean, most of my members use this too, so it is definitely best in slot. Now let's move to bear skin. Damage reduction 3% when energy is at 100. Energy means your hunger, not stamina, but hunger. So if your belly is full over here, to make sure it's full, just eat food like this. Now it's definitely full because you have the filled up stat. So as long as you see this, your belly is full. This bear skin is great for the start, early game for damage reduction, but late game it's not great. So instead of bear skin, what you want to use is the floating ice bear skin if you don't have golden wool available. And you just need to have and your hunger filled up above 60. As soon as it exceeds above 60, you get that damage reduction 4%. When it falls below 60, you will lose it. This just gives you 1% higher damage reduction. Snowfield Bear Skin gives you max HP 800 when energy is less than 60. So that means when you drop your hunger below 60, which is basically somewhere here, I think. When it drops below this bar, then you get more HP. Kind of makes no sense to me why you would use this, because it doesn't sound great at all. Like, why would you increase your max HP? You would have to basically keep your hunger low all the time, which is almost impossible because you have to use food buffs and stuff. And then we have Cave Bear Skin. Upon taking damage, expend 10 energy to recover 10% HP. The cooldown is 30 seconds. Now, you're trading more HP for damage reduction. Would you rather have 10% HP restored, or would you rather have 8 to 10% damage reduction, which is always there, and it's for all of your 20,000 HP, for example? This is not that great. Basically, as soon as you take any kinds of damage, you could be taking a SMG shot, which would do like 200 damage. Then this effect is just gonna proc your helmet hide, becomes useless. You're on a cooldown for 30 seconds, so I would not recommend using this. But if you don't have golden wool, then for sure you can take this, I guess, if you have no other option. I put it as 5th best for PvP because the floating ice bear skin and bear skin is definitely better than the cave bear skin. Now we have crocodile hides. Damage reduction 3% when hydration is at 100%. So the same way as this one, except it's just thirst. Your thirst bar has to be 100%. Again, if it's not, just drink water like this. As you see, the hydration stat appears. It's now 100%. 100%. Damage reduction 4%, but lose hydration 30% more quickly while in combat. It's up to you what you use. This is the same thing as the bear skin. So these two, I will just mark them as 3rd best for PvP and 2nd best for PvP. It's whatever you have available. So they're both literally the same. Now next is Coastal Bay Crocodile Skin. Damage reduction 10% when invisible. This is basically only when you are invisible. As soon as you leave invisibility, you lose that damage reduction. Definitely, I would never use this at all. I can't even imagine where I would use this. Golden Wool still beats it. The way you can become invisible is Spectral Cloak, or by just using a special drone perk that makes you invisible when you fly. So this probably would be great if you flying while you are invisible with the drone. Then yeah, that might work, but that's only for Prisoners Clash. Next up, we have Fox Skin. Damage reduction 10% when not in combat. The way you enter combat is you shoot a player. You now shot the player and you are in combat for roughly, I think, 6 or 7 seconds. So now we are out of combat. And as soon as I shoot a bullet, we are in combat and we're out of combat, because we did not hit a target. You will receive that 10% damage reduction for 1 bullet. As soon as you get hit, you will lose the hide perk. So this would be great for negating first shots, like from bingo, but it's like a one-time thing. You get shot once and then the next bullet is just gonna do a lot of damage to you. So this is why I would still use golden wool, because it's always there no matter if you're in combat or not. It's better than just surviving that 1 bullet. It does stack together with resist advantage mod, by the way. Yes, it does, but I would not use this. And then lastly, Desert Fox Skin. When not in combat, recover 0.5% HP per second, but lose hydration more quickly. I would never use this either. I'm not sure where this could be useful. Maybe in PVE when you don't shoot mobs and you're just running through. But again, remember, if you get hit by a mob or someone shoots you, this will not work. Now we have Cowhide. Crit damage reduction 7%. So same way as weak spot damage reduction, it just reduces additively your crit damage. So let's say someone has 200% crit damage, right? Instead of 200%, they will deal 193% crit damage to you. So this is very useless. It's just, it doesn't work multiplicatively. If it did work multiplicatively, then yes, this would be amazing, but it doesn't. Next up is Valley Cowhide. Upon taking crit damage, recover 15% HP. Cooldown is 30 seconds. So this only works if you get critted on by an enemy. It could work great against Jaws, but honestly, I would still stick with Golden Wool. Like, there's just nothing beats the Golden Wool, man. So that's basically it for the helmet hides. After I talk about every single hide pieces on every single armor piece, I will conclude which one's the best for everything. So now we are moving to mask. Deer hide, melee impact damage, 12%. In game it says impact damage, but here in my sheet it says melee, because that's what it is. So let's get right into it. We're gonna craft the deer hide impact damage 12%, and we're gonna equip this, only this armor piece. So when you sprint with a melee weapon and you click the left click, you do a impact dash into the enemy. We're doing 1,856 in the weak spot, it's always the same. So if I take this mod or mask off, now we're gonna do less. 1657. If I put it back on, just for last test, we're gonna do the same damage again. So we do wide damage, 1546, and now if I equip the mask of the impact damage, we do 1381. If I tested a gun with this, you can see that if I shoot the body, we do 102, and if I equipped the mask mod, we still do 102. So this is just a dev's mistake. They need to include melee before impact damage, because it confuses players. It thinks that it's impact damage that deals more damage to animals or players. And as we all know, some weapons have impact deals more damage against Protocell. That is a separate thing. Impact for the weapon buff, that is, and there's impact for melee weapons. So do not get confused by that. Even if you go to the wiki of the game, which is here, click the assistant, and if you ask them what is impact, it will give you an answer that follow a sprint immediately when an attack while holding a melee weapon to form an impact. What is impact for weapons? And then there's the impact element. Impact element, a weapon element that counters Protocell, metahumans, vultures, and animals, dealing additional 25% damage to them. So that's two different things. Impact element and then impact with a melee weapon. I hope this clears the confusion. I do agree though, their wording sucks ass, bro. Next up, we have the Highland Deerhide. It gives you melee impact damage 10%, and the effect is doubled when sprint exceeds 120%. Now, I don't know how much is 120%, but basically, let's just imagine that when you're sprinting, I guess when you just have so much speed, you're running super fast, you just double the effect to 20% here. But I don't know mathematically, like, how much is 120% sprint speed, though. Forest Deerhide, melee impact crit rate 20%. So when you impact the enemy, only by impact, not when you slash normally, but only when you do the shift dash melee impact, then your crit rate will be 20% higher. That's it, only for that. And then Tundra Deerhide, melee impact damage is 15%. That one would be the best if you're using the melee. Wasteland Wolfskin, weak spot damage 6% when stamina exceeds 90. If your stamina drops below that, you will lose that weak spot damage. Conditional hides are not that great, so I kinda stay away from those. The best one here would be 4.5% if you have that, which is the Grassland Wolfskin. Then the Jungle Wolfskin gives you weapon damage 6% when stamina is below 60. It's also conditional, so out of all of these, I would not use any single one. Except the Wolfskin for early game. This is the only one that's great for early game. Now moving on to Rabbit Fur. It gives you elemental damage 4%. That's it. Dreamy Rabbit Fur gives you 6%. And Lucky Rabbit Fur will give you 10% elemental damage for 3 seconds after you crit with the weapon. Critting means when your crit rate triggers. So that's all it is. This would be useful for corrosion, jaws, but there is better options to use than these three, so I would never use them at all. And we'll get to that later. Wool, status damage 4%. If you have that on, then your status damage will increase over here into the same multiplier. Kind of a meh hide. It's only good early game if you have that. Then we have status damage 6% while moving. If you stop moving, or if you're, then you don't get that if you're standing still. You would always have to be constantly moving for this to activate. Then we have status damage 6% when stamina exceeds 90. So as long as your stamina is higher than the one circle, which this is 100%, 90% stamina would be around here. So if you have more stamina than this bar that I have right now, you will get that damage bonus. However, if you have this amount of stamina, you do not get it because your stamina is lower than 90 right now. And then lastly, we have Golden Wool. Weapon damage and status damage is 12% in total between them, with the proportion changing every second. This is the best damage hide you can have possibly for every single weapon. Whether you're using Jaws, whether you're using Bingo, and I will talk about this a little bit later, why it's the best and why it could be better than the Mounted Cowhide. Physical damage 8% when stamina is at least 120. We will talk about all of this. The reason why I use Golden Wool is because it's not conditional, it's always there. You get weapon damage and it's always like changing over and over, regardless if you have stamina or not enough stamina. So that's why I mark it first best in slot for PvP, and of course it's best in slot for PvE. And it's situational. Like on the mask you can have Golden Wool, and sometimes Mounted Cowhide might be better because sometimes you don't sprint in some boss rooms, you just stand still and you shoot. So of course, if you don't need to use stamina, then the Mounted Cowhide will be better. If you need to use stamina, then Golden Wool will be better. It just depends on the scenario. Now we're gonna move to bear skin. Frost elemental damage is 5%. That's it. It's great, but golden wool is still gonna be better with any weapon used because you get weapon damage and status damage at the same time. Floating ice bear skin will give us frost elemental damage 8% when energy is at 100%. So when your belly is full, you just get more damage. Same as the helmet mod where you get more damage reduction, except this time it's just frost elemental damage boost. Snowfield bear skin, shock elemental damage 8% when energy is below 60. So when our hunger drops below 60, we get shock elemental damage. Note how it says shock elemental damage, not elemental damage, which means you get only shock damage, which is power surge damage. If you were using burn, you're not getting, it will not work for this hide. While here, it says cave bear skin, elemental damage 7% while crouched. So elemental damage means that it's every elemental. It's burn, it's frost, it's shock, and it's blast. So you would be getting all 4 types of elemental damages if you're crouched. Crocodile hide is melee damage 10%. That's all there is to it. Melee crit rate is 7%. Coastal Bay crocodile skin, crit damage 10% while invisible. Fox skin will give you crit damage 6% when not in combat. Polar fox skin will give you crit rate 5% when not in combat. And desert fox skin will give you crit damage 10% when not in combat. So again, it's only for 1 bullet. If you get shot at, I don't see a point using these. You saw how before we were explaining the impact damage, and there is impact elemental damage, and there is no elemental damage on your weapons. Each weapon you use has elemental type. For example, if you click O and click blueprints, right click on jaws, for example, click details, you can see that it has a suppression element type. This is called a element type. Let's just say it's a weapon's passive element type. It deals more damage against deviants by 25%. If you use jaws with mountain cowhide, the mountain cowhide will not work at all because the cowhide will give you physical damage. What physical damage is for example guns that do not have an elemental attribute or damage bonus. So this is physical damage. Anything that says this here, the mountain cowhide will work. Anything that has suppression, any weapon that has impact, mountain cowhide will not work. If your weapon has penetration, deals more damage against Rosetta, mountain cowhide will not work for these weapons. So it only works for weapons that have no elemental attributes or damage bonus. So if you're using bingo, then do not worry. The mountain cowhide will work, or the cowhide will work, because they do not have these special elemental types passives here. If you use memento, it has penetration, deals more damage against Rosetta. So again, mountain cowhide will not work for this weapon. The best option to use for the mask would be golden wool. Any weapon that doesn't work with mountain cowhide, the best option is to use the golden wool. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to show it to you right now. Say, for example, you're using the Silent Anabasis gun, and this gun has impact, deals more damage against Protocell. So right now, I'm going to equip a mask that has physical damage 8% when stamina is at least 120, which means I also have to increase my stamina a little bit because we do not have enough. So let me just increase it like this. Now we have 120 stamina, but just to make sure, I will increase it just a little bit further. Now our stamina is above 135. That's how much stamina we have. The mask mod should give us 8% more damage because we have enough stamina. If I shoot, we do 41 damage with our M4. 41, 41, 41. If I unequip this mask, we still do 41. But now, let's use a weapon that does not have an elemental type. For example, the pistol. It has no elemental attributes or damage bonus. So let's equip that. Let's equip our mask as well. Physical damage, mountain cowhide. And you can see we do 110 damage with the mask. And if I unequip the mask, we will do 102. So this is why it's so situational whether you use mountain cowhide or not. It all depends on the gun you're using. It all depends on the scenario you're in. It all depends if you're doing PVE or PvP. It all depends if you have enough stamina to maintain the usage of this hide. That's why I don't use this in PvP. I use golden wool in PvP. And in PvE, I sometimes might use this. And the only way to get this hide is in Way of Winter or transfer the buffalo, because buffaloes are exclusive to Way of Winter. Next up we have Valley Cowhide. It recovers 30 stamina when stamina falls below 30. The cooldown is 30 seconds. Not really a great choice, but if you like to roll a lot, then this might be for you. However, me, I do not use this. I prefer more damage, which is the golden wool. Let's move on to top and bottom. And top and bottom has the same effects. So you can see my savior top. I have max stamina 20%, sprint speed 5%, and it's a wasteland wolf skin. And on the pants, it's also the same skin. So top and pants have the same stat effects. If you're playing in Way of Winter, then focus on the hide that gives you the highest frost resist or heat resist if you need those. But if you're playing in any server that there's no temperature mechanic, then these hides will be useless other than the sprint speed that it gives you. Anyways, deer hide gives you cold resist and frost resist 5. Highland deer hide gives you cold resist and frost resist 10, and it gives you sprint speed 5%. Forest deer hide gives you cold resist and frost resist 5. When noticed by an enemy, you lose sprint speed minus 10%. I don't know why it's like this. So right now, this is how fast we're sprinting, and 20% should be a huge number. So let's see, we're sprinting like this. The enemy's gonna notice us. I mean, it literally doesn't do anything, bro. This is like a full scam. So yeah, forest deer hide is probably the worst out of all. It's even worse than the deer hide because it gives you minus 10% sprint speed. Like, why would it even do that? And it's a purple too. It has to be a typo, man. I don't know. Tundra deer hide gives you 15% cold resist and frost resist. Now, I wouldn't use any of these because there's way better options like wolf skin, wasteland skin, which gives you max stamina 20% and sprint speed. So I would definitely use these more. Next up, we have wolf skin, max stamina 15%, wasteland wolf skin, max stamina 20%, sprint speed 5%, and grassland wolf skin gives you heat resist and burn resist 10, and it gives you max stamina 15. So it's great for Way of Winter. If you don't play in Way of Winter, then no need to get this. Jungle wolf skin gives you cold resist and frost resist 10, max stamina 15. Out of all of these, if you play Way of Winter, I would prefer to use still Wasteland because you sprint faster. Because there's other ways you can get cold resist and frost resist. But if you're really in desperate need of cold resist or heat resist, then just go with Grassland or Jungle for Way of Winter. For me though, I would probably stick with Wasteland Wolfskin for the max speed and max stamina. Because I'm just a rolling Andy who just loves rolling everywhere I go, so... And Wasteland Wolfskin is just the best for PvP, so if you're using this, definitely put this on your top piece and bottom piece. Next up we have Rabbit Fur. It gives you cold resist and frost resist 5. Good for early game, not that great for late game. Dreamy Rabbit Fur, cold resist and frost resist 10. Heat resist and burn resist 5 as well. Not that great, but if you get the fur, I mean use it until you get better option. Lucky Rabbit Fur, cold resist and frost resist 10, and damage reduction 5% when not in combat. It's not that great either. I would never use this, but I still put it as a 4th best for PvP. Like if you don't have any other option available, then just use this one if you want damage reduction and if you want cold resistance. But still, in my eyes, the Wasteland Wolfskin would be the best option. Next up is Wool. It gives you cold resist and frost resist 10, and dampen duration is increased by 100%. So if you go in the water, you'll be soaked for 30 more seconds instead of 30 seconds, so in total for 1 minute. Rockwall Wool will give you cold resist and frost resist 10, plus an additional 3 per teammate. In total, you will get 19 cold resist if you have a full team with you, I believe. Mountain Wool will give you cold resist and frost resist 15, dampen duration 100%. So instead of 10 here with Wool, you get an extra 5 cold resist. Golden Wool will give you cold resist and frost resist 20, and heat resist and burn resist minus 5. So it's good for winter environments, but not good for heat environments. You'll have to still like swap the armor anyways. So if you go to the hot area, you'll have to use the heat resist hide in here anyways. So it doesn't really matter. But yeah, Golden Wool would be the best here because it gives you the most amount of cold. We have Bearskin, which gives you cold resist and frost resist 10. It recovers 3% HP upon defeating an enemy at 10 Celsius or below. If it's 10 Celsius, you will still get healed by 3% when you defeat an enemy. So if it's above 10 though, you will not get that heal. Same goes with Floating Ice Bearskin, except you get 5 more cold resist and 2% more HP restored when you defeat an enemy at 10 Celsius or below. Snowfield Bearskin will give you cold resist and frost resist 15, and roll speed 10% at 10 Celsius or below. And then the Cave Bearskin will give you cold resist and frost resist 10. Energy depletion rate is minus 25% when in cold status. You lose less hunger when your character starts getting hypothermia. Kind of a useless hide. It's a legendary hide, which is, you know, a high rarity. It's hard to get. So a bearskin will give you the same amount, 10 cold resists versus this one. And it even heals you when you kill enemy, while this one doesn't. So like Cave Bearskin would probably be the worst here for Way Winter. Crocodile hide will give you heat resist and burn resist 10 and dampen duration 50%. Beach crocodile skin will give you heat resist and burn resist 15, dampen duration 50% and damage reduction 5% while dampened. The dampen buff lasts not that long, so you're only getting that damage reduction for a little bit of time, which means you will always constantly would have to go back to water over and over to get the damage reduction. So that's why I would never use this, but it does give you a good amount of heat resist, so it would be the best for way of winter. Same with coastal bay crocodile skin. You also get status damage reduction, but we all care about the heat resist here. So by the time I'm recording this video, this doc is not finished, but as soon as I upload this, it will be fully finished. So once you click it, it will have everything listed which hides the best. So for example, golden wool is best for way of winter for cold resistance and for heat resistance. And in way of winter for heat, the grassland wolf skin is the second best. And the beach crocodile skin is the first best. Now moving on to fox skin, enemies take 10% longer to notice you. So this is only when you like sneak behind enemies, and when you're about to backstab them, 0.1 second longer to notice you, which sucks. I don't think that would be useful at all. So I would never use this. Polar fox skin, enemies take 10% longer to notice you, damage reduction of 5% when not in combat. Also, it's like, it sounds so useless. These fox skins are so useless. Enemies take 15% longer to notice you. This sounds just really bad. Like, come on. There's way better options they can have. Like, wasteland wolf skin, max stamina and sprint speed. Look at that. You could be moving faster and have more stamina rather than enemies noticing you longer. Like, what? Who would use that? Then we have Cowhide, max load 20 increase, Mountain Cowhide, cold resist and frost resist 15, and max load 20. If you don't want to stick with golden wool, you will be trading and losing 5 cold resist though, but you will be getting more load, which means you can carry more items. So I will definitely put this Mountain Cowhide as second best hide for cold resist, and third best hide will be the Velvet for cold resist. Valley Cowhide gives you heat resist and burn resist 10, plus an additional 5% while dampened, and the max load is 20%. So you get to carry more items, but at a trade-off 5 heat resist loss, while the crocodile skin gives you 15. So up to you if you need that 20 load just for that 5 heat resist loss. All depends on you. But definitely I'll put this as second best hide for heat resist. It's personal preference, to be honest. So now we're going to go to the shoes hides. We're going to start with deer hide, and deer hide gives you sprint speed plus 6%. Notice that sprint speed only works when you sprint, which is when you hold shift. It doesn't work when you move. Highland deer hide acts the same way, except you get 2% more. Forest deer hide acts the same way, except you get 6% more than the deer hide. But the sprinting stamina cost is increased by 30%. Your stamina will run out fairly quicker than it normally would. The Tundra deer hide, it gives you minus 50 sprinting stamina cost, but you don't gain any movement speed bonuses. Out of all of these, the best one would probably be Forest deer hide. If you don't like the stamina cost, then the Highland deer hide. Wolf skin will give you movement speed 4%, so that means when you move, ADS, scoped in, or in general when you're crouched, even if you're sprinting, it will still give you movement speed. Wasteland gives you 2% more than the wolf skin. Grassland wolf skin will give you 8% when stamina exceeds 80. So if you get below 80 stamina, you will lose that movement speed. And jungle wolf skin will give you movement speed 30% while crouched. So only when crouched, not when sprinting, not when moving. Out of all of these, the best one would be wasteland wolf skin if you always want to have the movement speed. I would not pick grassland because you gain 2% more, but only if your stamina is above. So it's a conditional buff, and conditional buffs suck in this game. Next up, we're moving to rabbit fur. You gain a jump height plus 8%. This will make your character jump higher than you normally would by default. Dreamy rabbit fur does the same, except you get 2% more. Lucky rabbit fur will give you 15% when double jump is activated. So this is the jump without the buff. Now we're gonna equip the boots, and we're already gaining the 15% jump height. We're jumping higher. If I unequip it again, we are gonna jump lower. So even though it does say jump height plus 50% when double jump is activated, that's not true. Your first jump will also be higher. Not sure by how much, but let's get a food buff. Now when I do the double jump, we can see the ceiling by like 20%. But if I unequip the boots, we can't even see it. Or we can even barely see the ceiling. So even though it says when the double jump is active, it works for both jumps. The lucky rabbit fur might be useful for situations like where you want to climb buildings and they're not accessible easily, but I still would not use this if I was you. I would stick with the golden wool. Now moving on to the wool, it gives you climb speed 10%. So when you climb buildings, you just climb faster. So now there's climb speed and then there's vault speed. Vault means when you vault over things like small fences. I can't really like vault over them here because, oh, there you go. So this is vaulting, as you saw right there. And climbing is this animation right here. Honestly, it sounds useless in my eyes, like who would want climb speed and vault speed? Like you're already putting yourself at a disadvantage if you do these type of things in PvP, so I wouldn't recommend getting these. Now, golden wool will give you roll speed, fluctuates between 1% and 15% every second. This one is a really weird one. I think it's actually not 15%, but 25%, but I'm gonna show you what I mean. So there's a coastal bay crocodile skin that gives you the exact same as golden wool, except it gives you 12%. So let's test golden wool and coastal bay crocodile skin and which one is better. So easy way to test this is just build a foundation line. So we have the golden wool boots right now on, and this is the start. And I'm carrying a weapon, not a melee weapon that gives me movement speed boost. So we're gonna sprint and roll exactly when we reach the line. We're gonna end up here. So I'm gonna put a sign exactly where my character is standing, and we're gonna put golden wool. Let's say that was 15%. I'm not sure how much that was because golden wool is random. You can roll slower or faster, but you can see sometimes, okay, we made it to the same point again. We rolled to the same point. So sometimes you could roll slower, sometimes you could roll less. As you can see, we rolled less now. So this is where we ended up. That's probably golden wool 14%. Now if I go do it again, we rolled even further away, so that must be 15% over here, and this one was 13%. Let's do one more last roll. Okay, so this is actually probably 14%, and that one was like 13% there. Out of all of these rolls, I mostly will roll far away. As you can see, it's always going to be 14%, 13%, but now I'm gonna try, instead of the golden wool, and put myself the hide that gives you roll speed 12%. So let's put that on, and if you take a look, and this is how far I roll. This is 12%, and this is 13%, 14%, and 15% of roll speed. So 12% will give you only this distance. It's very little. And I'm trying to sprint for the maximum speed, because if you didn't know, if you do not sprint, you will roll even less distance. But yeah, golden wool is the first best in slot PvP. This is the hide that you put if you want to roll far away. Moving to bear skin, we have movement speed 8% at 10 Celsius or below. This works only if you are at night. At night you lose minus 10 Celsius, and if you're carrying the fish, you will lose 5 Celsius. That will get you to 10 Celsius, which means you will move faster. But I don't recommend using that because it's only at nighttime, and during daytime it does serve no use at all. Then floating ice bear skin does the same. Cave bear skin gives you movement speed 20% when you are in a player's territory. Any player's territory, friends or enemies, doesn't matter. It's not for frontiers, it's just bases of other players. Now moving on to crocodile hides, it gives you roll speed 8%. Difference is very little, you will probably not notice it at all, so it's not worth putting roll speed. Beach crocodile skin will give you 20 roll speed when stamina is higher than 80. If you drop below 80, then you will lose all of that rolling speed. Now we have the roll speed 20% when stamina exceeds 80, and look how little I roll. I roll basically nowhere. It's like it does nothing. So I don't know if this is bugged or not. It probably is, because when we use the golden wool, because using the golden wool 1% to 15%, it sounds like it's giving you 40% or something. I'm not even lying. Like, take a look how far away I roll with this. Out of all of these, the best one would be still golden wool. Fox skin gives you movement speed 16% while crouched. That explains everything. Polar fox skin will give you movement speed 50% while crouched at 10 Celsius or below. Same as the bear skin. It has to be nighttime and you have to be holding a fish if you're playing in Manibus. If you're in way winter, then you just need to be in a cold environment. And desert fox skin will give you movement speed 30% while crouched. Can't be me, man. I would never use these hides. Cowhide will give you max stamina 10. Mountain cowhide will give you max stamina 15, and valley cowhide will recover your stamina increase by 20%. So you'll just increase your stamina faster. So that's it for the shoes. Now for the gloves, they all mostly suck. Like, they're not that great. The best ones would be logging and mining speed, which is deer hides. Poultry meat and rabbit meat yield is like completely useless. Do not use that at all. Like, why would you even bother with meat yield when you can just kill more animals? Herb and seed yield would be the best if you're farming herbs. You will not get that much though. Like, let's say you're getting 2 aloe veras, which is considered a herb. That 2 will not increase you at all. You would have to get around 4 per yield for that 15% to work, and then you would get an additional 1. So it's not that great. It helps, I guess, if you get enough harvest from the farm. While this is herb seed yield, this is herb yield. So this gives you more seeds when you harvest, and this gives you more of the plant itself. Golden wool will give you gold ore yield 20% with a small chance of yielding a gold ingot. Sounds really useless because you can just smelt it, and what you would rather have, and what is the best, is logging and mining yield 25% for the final strike only. That would be the best, and it works for every single ore, every single tree. Anything that is choppable will work. And now let's go to the best preset for PvP, and for the helmet, to conclude everything that we talked about, the best hides for the helmet for PvP will be golden wool, mask will be golden wool, or mountain cowhide, depends on the gun you're using. Again, I explained everything in the video, so if you missed it, go back in the video where I explained these 2 hides, which one's the best. For the top and bottoms piece, you put wasteland wolfskin. For the shoes, you put golden wool, and for the gloves, you put beach or coastal. It doesn't matter. Both give you the same stats. That's it for this video. I hope this was helpful. I tried my best to keep this video as short as possible. Leave any suggestions you have in the comment section. As always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care and peace out.